What happens when truth speaks for itself, but no one is willing to accept it? Why do people question a message simply because they cannot trace its origin the way they expect? And what does it reveal when light appears in a place that prefers darkness? The tension in Jerusalem had not faded. Even after the dramatic moment with the woman and the crowd, the atmosphere remained charged. Questions were still hanging in the air. Opinions were still forming. And now Jesus speaks again. But this time, not in response to a trap, not in reaction to a test, but as a declaration. He stands before the people and says something simple, yet profound. I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. It is a statement that cuts through noise, a statement that does not invite debate first, but demands reflection. Because light is not something you argue with. It is something you see. Something that reveals, something that exposes what was hidden. And immediately the Pharisees respond. You are testifying about yourself. Your testimony is not valid. In their perspective, truth requires external validation. It requires witnesses. It requires structure. It requires confirmation from outside the speaker. But Jesus is speaking from a different foundation. And that is where the disagreement begins. This is not just a disagreement about facts. It is a disagreement about understanding truth itself. The Pharisees are operating from legal structure. Jesus is speaking from divine identity. They are focused on external proof. He is revealing internal reality. And because of that difference, they cannot immediately understand each other. Jesus responds, not with irritation, but with clarity. Even if I testify on my own behalf, my testimony is valid, for I know where I came from and where I am going. This statement shifts the entire conversation, because he is not speaking as someone trying to prove identity. He is speaking as someone who already knows it. There is a difference between proving something and revealing something. One is defensive, the other is declarative. Jesus is not trying to gain approval, he is revealing truth. But the leaders struggle with this because they evaluate everything through human judgment. You judge by human standards, Jesus says. I pass judgment on no one. This does not mean he ignores truth. It means his judgment is rooted in something deeper than surface evaluation. Human judgment is often based on appearance, on limited perspective, on incomplete information. But divine judgment sees the full picture, past, present, and future, intentions, actions, and consequences. And that difference creates tension. Jesus continues, but if I do judge, my decisions are true, because I am not alone. I stand with the Father who sent me. Here, he introduces something the leaders are not willing to fully consider. His connection to the Father. Not as an abstract idea, but as the source of his authority. The leaders are looking for independent confirmation, but Jesus is pointing to divine unity. And that unity is what validates his message. Still they resist. They say, where is your Father? It is a question that appears simple on the surface, but underneath, it is filled with misunderstanding. They are thinking in physical terms. Jesus is speaking in spiritual reality. They are trying to locate a person. He is revealing relationship. Jesus responds with a sentence that carries weight. You do not know me or my Father. If you knew me, you would know my Father also. This is not a statement of accusation alone. It is a statement of revelation. Because knowing Jesus is not separate from knowing the Father, they are connected. And that connection is what the leaders are missing. The passage then notes something important. Jesus spoke these words while teaching in the temple courts near the treasury. But no one seized him. Why? Because his time had not yet come. Even in the midst of disagreement, there is divine timing at work. Even in tension, there is control beyond human authority. This detail reminds us that no matter how intense opposition becomes, it does not override purpose. Everything unfolds according to a larger plan. And that plan is not dictated by human reaction. It is guided by divine intention. But beyond the tension between Jesus and the leaders, there is something deeper happening in this moment. It is a confrontation between light and perception. Jesus says he is the light of the world. And light by its nature does two things. It reveals and it separates. It reveals what is hidden and it separates what is true from what is false. But not everyone responds to light in the same way. Some are drawn to it, others resist it. Because light does not only illuminate comfort, it also exposes resistance. The Pharisees' challenge is not just theological, it is perceptual. They are not denying that Jesus is speaking. They are questioning the legitimacy of his claim, but their standard of legitimacy is shaped by human systems, witnesses, approval, verification. Jesus is operating from divine identity, and that gap creates misunderstanding. This is a recurring theme throughout this passage. Human frameworks often struggle to recognize divine reality, not because truth is unclear, but because expectation limits perception. Jesus is not fitting into their categories, and because of that, they question him. But Jesus does not adjust his identity to match their expectations. Instead, he reveals truth as it is. I am the light of the world. That statement is not dependent on approval, it is self-revealing. Light does not need permission to exist, it simply shines. And those who are open, see. Those who are closed, resist. This creates an important reflection. How do we respond when truth does not align with expectation? Do we question truth itself, or do we examine our understanding? The leaders choose to question Jesus' testimony, but Jesus points to something deeper, his connection to the Father, his origin, his mission, his identity, all of which are not external claims, but internal realities. Then he says something that shifts the focus again. I know where I came from and where I am going. This is a statement of certainty, not based on opinion, but on purpose. Many people struggle with uncertainty about identity and direction, but Jesus speaks from complete awareness. He is not searching for meaning, he is revealing meaning. And that difference is central to this passage. The leaders are trying to define him through external validation, but Jesus is defining himself through divine relationship. One is limited, the other is eternal. As the conversation continues, the contrast becomes clearer. Human judgment versus divine truth. External validation versus internal authority. Surface understanding versus spiritual reality. And in that contrast, the tension grows. Because truth that is not aligned with expectation often creates resistance. But resistance does not invalidate truth. It only reveals disagreement with it. Jesus is not concerned with winning an argument. He is revealing reality. And reality does not change based on acceptance. The light continues to shine even when not recognized, even when questioned, even when resisted. That is the nature of truth. It does not depend on agreement to remain true. It simply is. And in that being, it invites response, not forced, but voluntary. The leaders choose skepticism, but others in the crowd are still watching, still listening, still deciding. And that is often where transformation begins, not in immediate acceptance, but in ongoing reflection, because truth has a way of continuing to speak, even after the moment passes. Jesus remains in the temple courts, teaching, speaking, revealing, not withdrawing, not changing his message, but continuing to stand in clarity. And that consistency is itself a testimony, because truth does not shift to accommodate pressure. It remains steady, even when questioned, even when misunderstood, even when challenged. As we reflect on this passage, we are invited into a deeper question. How do we evaluate truth? Do we rely solely on external validation? Or are we willing to consider deeper sources of understanding? Because sometimes truth does not come in the form we expect. Sometimes it does not align with systems we trust. Sometimes it challenges what we assume is correct. And in those moments, we are faced with a choice, to resist or to listen. Jesus' statement, I am the light of the world, is not just a claim. It is an invitation to step out of darkness, to step out of limited perception, to step into clarity. But that requires willingness. Willingness to see differently, willingness to question assumptions, willingness to follow light, even when it reveals more than we expected. The leaders in this passage struggle with that willingness. Not because they lack knowledge, but because they rely on established frameworks that cannot fully contain what they are witnessing. And that is the challenge of encountering something greater than expectation. It forces reconsideration. It demands reflection. It invites transformation. As the passage closes, the tension remains unresolved. Jesus continues to speak. The leaders continue to question. The crowd continues to observe, and the light continues to shine, not dependent on approval, not diminished by resistance, but steady, present, revealing. And that is where the story leaves us. Not with final agreement, but with invitation. An invitation to consider how we respond when truth speaks, even when it challenges our expectations. Because in the end, the question is not only about who Jesus is, it is also about how we respond to the light he brings. Thank you for watching this video. If this message spoke to your heart, don't forget to like, follow the channel, and share this video with someone who needs encouragement today.